Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of Women Wednesday. I am your host, Lady B. Bless. As you know, Women Wednesday spotlight women in leadership. This is a weekly look at some women who are doing amazing things in leadership role, and also as mentors, role models, change makers, community leaders, presidents, CEOs, executive directors, and boss ladies. These women that I spotlight weekly are definitely women that leads. And this episode, we have an exciting show for you guys. So I'm very happy that everyone was able to tune in, and everyone that's on the Facebook, welcome. Today we're spotlighting none other than Professor Anita Diop. She is the African princess. And the subject is, who is the African princess? She's also a queen mother, an author, community activist, executive director of the African Roots and Heritage Foundation. She's known as the Spirit of Africa because of her passionate work on bringing cultural awareness and participating in the ongoing African Renaissance and uplifting African people no matter where they dwell. She's also the professor of African American and American history at Hopkinsville Community College in Kentucky. So without any further ado, let me say hello and welcome. Welcome, Madam Professor Anita. How are you today?
I'm fine. How are you?
I am wonderful. It is my pleasure to have you here today. I've been trying to pin her down like a star for about 2 months now.
Very thank busy. You for having me.
It is my pleasure. It is my pleasure. So let's start off by introducing yourself. Who is Anita Diop?
That's Diop.
Diop. Oh my goodness. Oh, the D is silent. Yes.
Yes. The DI has a J sound.
Oh, so okay.
JOEP phonetically.
And what is the origin of that?
It is Wolof. I'm married to a Senegalese man. He is of the Wolof people of Senegal.
Oh, wow. Okay. Well, we'll dig into that a little more later. So go ahead. Tell us a little about yourself.
So, well, you said so much, but I am... I want to thank you for allowing me to come into your space and share my life with you. I believe we met about 4 or 5 years ago in Atlanta. You had invited me to an event, and I appreciated that. But who am I? The African princess. And many people say, well, why don't you go by the name of Queen? And I'll give you the story. In 1997, I went on my first trip to Africa, and I toured 5 different countries. And at the beginning, I had stopped in Ghana and met a group of people, and they began to call me the Ghana princess. I was the Ghana princess from America. But after I had toured the other 4 countries and came back to Ghana, right before I left to come back to the United States, they said, oh, we just can't call you the Ghana princess. We must call you the African princess because you represent all of Africa. And so that same week, I came back to the United States, and simultaneously, all of my friends began to call me the African princess. So whether I was on the east side of the Atlantic or the west side of the Atlantic, people began to call me the African princess. So that is a name that stuck with me, and I go by it.
And you enjoy it, right?
I enjoy it. And even though that was like 25 years ago, I still like to think of myself as a princess.
You are a princess. Well, to me, you're a
queen.
Day,
one day I'll get to the queenship.
Oh, you're already there. You've exceeded the queenship and all the work that you've been doing since I've met you. It's been fantastic. And I always wonder where she gets this energy from. So what motivates you? You have so much energy. You're always moving. One time I see you, you're in Ghana. The next time I see you, you're in you're at the African Union. The next time I see you, you're at home resting, and then you're off again. What motivates you?
Well, I would like to say that it is my ancestors. Africans in the diaspora are hearing the call of the ancestors to reconnect with the motherland, as well as those on the continent are being beckoned to reconnect with us. When I was 6 years old, I had my very first vision. And in that vision, I traveled to Africa, meeting my ancestors, meeting friends and relatives and all kind of people, kings, chiefs, dignitaries, and so forth and so on. So as a child, it was put in me. And I have followed that vision from that very day. And there are times as life would happen that you do get tired, but it is the energy of the ancestors to bring forth the new glory of Africa that gives me a new energy each and every day.
Wow. So as an African American, because you were born here, yes?
Yes,
As
yes.
an African American at 6 years old, did you know much about Africa, or the vision was the first experience?
The vision was the first experience. I did not know anything about Africa except for what we seen at that time were the Tarzan movies. I had no idea of the continent, the people, the history. I had no idea at that particular time. And it seemed like that particular vision lay dormant in me until I went to college. When I went to college, I went in with a notion to get a degree in communications. But as I was there, the light bulb, so to speak, turned on in me. I had a teacher by the name of Professor Ella Davis, and I had an intro to Africana Studies class. And midway in that class, I said, I'm going to make this my major. This is what I'm cut out to do. And so I went ahead and completed my undergraduate degree in Africana Studies as well as speech communications, and then went on in my professional degree to in history, specializing in culture and the arts. So with my formal training and my ancestors, these were the foundations that were laid for me to begin to go into the spaces that I do in terms of bringing awareness and giving African Americans an idea to reconnect with the continent.
Okay, so that led to your involvement with Africa. And
Yes.
let's lead into the program that we had in Atlanta, Georgia. It was at Georgia Tech that you were invited to. It was called Bridging the Gap Between Africans and African Americans. How do we bridge the gap? How do we connect? It was such an emotional program. If
It
you
was
remember it was
indeed.
so
Yes,
we
I
had people
do.
crying because a lot of Africans did not understand slavery and the mentality that it did to the African Americans. And a lot of the African Americans did not understand colonization and what it did to the mentality of the natural born Africans in Africa. So with all of that information and your involvement in Africa, tell me some of your experience that you've experienced throughout the years dealing with Africans and African Americans, and some of the things that you are doing to sort of bring them together.
Well, my experiences run the gamut from A to Z, from good to bad to high to low. I have
I'm so
experienced
sure.
so many things, but I consider each experience an adventure, something to learn about myself. And as you recall, we viewed the film by Perez Owino,
Yes.
Unbound. And I love that film. I talk about it all the time, and I try to get people to go and watch it because it opens up the conversation between Africans and African Americans, and it dispels myths, and it gives us an opportunity to say, hi, my name is Anita and I am from America, and I am a descendant of the formerly enslaved Africans that were kidnapped out of Africa. And then the African has an opportunity to say, hi, my name is Salimu, and I am from Senegal. And we were colonized, and in our history books, we weren't even taught about the slave trade.
Slavery.
And one of the experiences that I had in going into the continent, there's many things that Africans are not taught. So when they come to America or they watch TV from their homes, they get a very biased and slanted view of the
Limited
plight,
view.
limited and obscure view, actually. Because I remember in the conversation that we were having in Atlanta, I had to really step up and stand up for the African American experience. And one of the things that Africans tend to think is that African Americans are lazy, African Americans, they're crybabies, they just cry and complain. But my position is understand our history. The African American is the body of people that pushes the envelope for diversity in America. You say, well, but you're always crying and complaining. Well, let me put it in terms that you can understand. It was the African American that fought lawsuits in the educational system. We have cases like Brown versus the Board of Education that was legislated, and the judgment came out that African Americans can indeed attend public schools. But what people don't realize is that at the time that Blacks were being segregated from the educational system, so were the Asians, the Latinos, and other races. So when that Brown versus the Board of Education case was won, it opened up the schooling for all races in America. And that's how we push that envelope of diversity in America.
And that's just one of them. Yes, go ahead.
Yes. And then another case, and Brown versus the Board of Education is specifically covered kindergarten through the 12th grade. But there's another case, Sweat versus Painter, that actually won the case again through the court system that allowed African Americans, one, to be admitted to college, and two, to be able to participate in the classroom. Because before this landmark case, African American may be able to be admitted to a school, but they were not admitted to the classroom. Therefore, they had to take their lessons in the hallway. And oftentimes the professors would close the door. So how much of that lecture did that student receive? So it is because of that case that African Americans and all other races are able to enjoy going to the college of their choice. And then the third one is they redid the laws concerning the restrictive covenant. The restrictive covenant says that whatever race you are, if you own property, you cannot buy and sell your property to African Americans. So that limited where African Americans could lease, rent, or buy property, okay, which normally was in a red line district. Well, we again fought that case and got rid of restrictive covenants. And then by 1964, we have the 1964 Civil Rights Bill that also had an attachment for immigration. It opened up the door that was previously closed for more immigrants to come from Africa. All right. And with that, the Africans began to come over. They came over after the labor and the hard work was done. We were able to remove the restrictions on education,
Yes.
both in secondary and also in the college setting. We were able to remove the restrictions on where you could live. So the new African would come to America, get a house in the nice neighborhoods, go to a prestigious college, and say, "Oh, life is fine. Oh, what's wrong with the African American?"
Right. Right.
So they came over after the work was done, and it gives them a skewed view of what took place so that they can come over and enjoy. And that's what we talked about. That was my role in the conversation when we were in
Yes.
Atlanta, to bring the mindset equal to where we are today. And to those Africans that say, "Oh, African Americans, they just cry." But every time we cry, we get a piece of legislation passed. And when that legislation is passed, it pushes that needle closer to diversity, because that is a place that the United States is coming to. It's not there yet. It
And
is
it's
coming
been less
there.
than 100 years. So
Yes,
it's not been a long period of time. You think about the 60s. I was born in the 60s. Well, the end part of the 60s. If
yes,
I was born like 10 years earlier, I would have been born in that type of situation. So America is still young as far as civil rights are concerned.
yes.
Even like
It-
yesterday, the right to vote.
yes. That's a whole different conversation. But even just with our current president saying that they should stop the vote because he's ahead,
Ah,
what about all those people? We're in the middle of a pandemic. So you're saying because you're in the lead and people that either had COVID or were protecting themselves from COVID took advantage of the mail in voting for safety purposes, because you're in the lead now, you want to tell them that their vote should not count, that their vote should not be counted?
yeah, yeah.
That is not the proper way to do things. Let all the votes be counted, and
Yes, they
how
should be.
whoever wins wins.
Yes. And that's the
But
way it
to
should
obstruct
be.
it, yeah. And this is what I'm talking about in terms of that diversity. We push that envelope of diversity.
So it's very interesting. We talked about Atlanta because it was such an emotional time. And I think after you spoke, everyone was very quiet. Your
Yes,
delivery was it was interesting because it was forceful, but forceful, laden with facts, but emotional.
yes,
It was emotional for you. And then the
yes,
crowd got emotional because I think before that we had a lot of Africans and they were talking about the stereotype, how in
yes.
Africa they know that the African American is this and African American is that. And all of a sudden I see the hand went like this. He took the mic. I'm like, what's about to go down? But
Yes,
after you finished, there was tears in the room.
yeah. This is how we learn.
Yeah.
Actually, in that year, I had participated in the African American Summit with the African Union in
Ah,
Washington D.C. later on that year. I think it was a month or two later, and we still had that same emotional response, because for the African American, this was the first time that the African is addressing us. Even though I, Anita, was not enslaved, I carried the blood of my ancestors that says, "How come you did not come rescue me?
right.
Why was I left alone?" And in that meeting, I believe I have a part of it on YouTube. In that meeting, grown men were sobbing. And because everyone that spoke felt like this was the moment in time that our collective ancestors brought us together to reunite. And the meeting was structured one way, but it actually went another way. Actually, the meeting was for the African, or what they call the new diaspora, those that have migrated in the last 25 or 30 years.
Yeah.
But the historical, which they called us the historical diaspora, the one that's been here, we came through slavery. They weren't really looking for us to be in the meeting. But when you call a summit for the diaspora, we're thinking about us, and those Africans were thinking about them. But it was our ancestors that made us think about each other. And that is why that was such a powerful, powerful meeting, because that was the first meeting of its kind where we were able to sort of woo-saw and get it off our chest.
Yes,
And
yes.
the Africans were like, oh,
And
we are
it's new
connected.
information. It's new
Yes.
information. It's new information to the Africans, and it's new information to the African Americans. Because even though we think we know history, we know the history they allow us to know.
Yes.
In Africa and in America, they give us the history they want us to know. Because literally, yes, we were enslaved. I'm Caribbean. In the Caribbean, we know that Africans did try to rescue some of the enslaved brothers and sisters. We know a lot of ships left Africa to come to rescue their brothers and sisters, but they got lost at sea. We know some made it to the Caribbean, but they didn't make it to the US, right? And that's why the Caribbean only went through slavery like 200 years, and where America went through slavery about 400 years. So there's a lot of dynamics that we don't know about, that we were never taught, that it's not in our history book, and they're not teaching us, you know? So there's all this misinformation that's going, like you and I could be related. You could be my auntie. I could be like your cousin and stuff, and we will never know because our history was destroyed along the way.
Yes.
You see? So it becomes a topic in where you really want to learn, and you really want to see the other side view. Go ahead. You were saying.
Yeah, two things. One, right now we do have the DNA test that allows us to scientifically locate our origins. And one of the great things that we don't know is that the actual DNA test was designed by a Black scientist.
See.
Okay, so that's another credit for our race. And the other thing is this: in 2012, the African Union put out a call to the diaspora to organize themselves, because it was time to reconnect Africa to the lost daughters and sons of Africa. And that's where I find my place, to be able to bridge the gap between the States and Africa, providing one, education. As you stated in the beginning, I am a professor of African American history, and I teach that class or classes part 1 and part 2 for Hopkinsville Community College. And then also I organize trips from the United States convening in Africa. Actually, at the end of this week or the beginning of next week on Sunday, I will be going to Tanzania.
Oh, wow.
We have, yes, and I'm going to be giving a presentation on the gifted artists. Remember, I said I'm in the culture and the arts. So I'm all about preserving the history and the culture of the African American, as well as exploring the impact that art can have for social transformation. When we look at the African and look at the impending Africana Renaissance and glory and rebirth, we have established in the Third Pan-African Cultural Congress that culture is the fourth pillar of development. And what that means is countries like Angola, Mozambique, and other countries have put into their curriculum for cultural managers as well as cultural officers. And what these people are trained to do is to locate and identify the stolen art and culture from Africa, and to be able to take these countries, various institutions, and individuals that have looted Africa and have a redress in the court system. Remember, I told you the ancestors are speaking.
Yes.
And they're making us ready for that new African glory. And how can we be glorious except we be one? Except we are the spirit of Africa, the spirit of oneness. So on many different fronts, on many different levels, each person has a role to play, whether it be a big role or a small role. But the cultural managers and cultural officers are busy being trained, graduating with their degrees, and going out into the world and redressing, giving that country an opportunity to redress the wrongs that have been created. When you look at the movie like the Black Panther, they were in the museum.
Yes.
And what is his name? Munger. What was his name?
Killmonger.
Killmonger identify various artifacts. And the very artifacts that they tell us is evil and is filled with the devil and all this kind of thing is the very thing that they have highlighted in
On
their
display.
museums, earning money, not
Yes.
just for display, it is for the benefit of wealth. So they steal from Africa and demonize it, but yet they monetize it.
Yeah.
So with the cultural managers and officers are trained to bring that wealth back to Africa in whatever form that it may come in. So you may see around the world, be it in Brussels, Germany, England, they have been asking, give us back our artifacts.
Especially England.
Yes, and then they will come back and say, well, we can loan it to you for a fee. Or the argument is, oh, you're Africa, you don't have the capability of keeping these nice shiny objects. And our argument is this: we created them in Africa.
Exactly.
We know how to preserve them in Africa.
And it was stolen.
Right.
Point
from
blank.
Africa.
Point blank, it was stolen.
Africa, exactly.
Yeah, and I know I was doing some research, and most of the artifacts in the US are at the university museums, which I found was very interesting. A lot of the universities in the United States have big galleries that house a lot of these artifacts from Africa. And it's a battle to get them to return it. They're holding on to it like they rightfully own these artifacts that were stolen from our people so many years ago. So in Tanzania, what program are you doing when you go to Tanzania?
Tanzania, this program is sponsored by the Teaching Artists Institute. And the name of the program is Art for Social Transformation. This is our fourth annual conference. And actually, I am what they call a TAI elder, TAI, TAI for Teaching Artists Institute. I was
Okay.
there at the inception of the program, and I serve as one of the advising elders for the program. So we're going to be in a city called Bagamoyo, which I'm learning about Bagamoyo. In Bagamoyo, the word itself means to lay your burden down. And what's significant about Bagamoyo is that it was the heart of the East African slave trade.
Okay.
So, as we had the West African slave trade, which we are products of,
Yeah.
there's the East African slave trade, where some of the individuals did come through the East African slave trade to end up in America or throughout the Americas, but most of them went into the Arabic world.
Oh,
So, um,
okay.
we're going to go to a city called Stone Town, and that is where they had the auction block where they auctioned off the Africans that were enslaved at that particular port. So it's going to be a very historical point in terms of looking at the slave trade from the East African perspective, and as well as looking at the various presenters and artists presenting their art and utilizing culture for that currency to make a change and impact on our current world.
That is going to be exciting. I bet
Yes,
you're looking forward to that.
yes, I
But
am.
you do a lot of tours. You started the African Roots and Heritage Foundation. What led you to start that, and what is the mission and the goal of the African Roots and Heritage Foundation?
That's a very good question. I actually started it out as the Metro Detroit Intellectual Society because I am an artist, right?
So you're
And
from
what I
Detroit
found,
originally?
yes, yes, I am from Detroit. And
Ah,
what
the
I
big M.
found, yes, what I found is as an artist and other artists, they may produce their writings or portraits or pictures or whatever have you, but there's a block between producing the art and displaying the art. So me and a gentleman by the name of Damon, we put a call out for a circle of critique. And the purpose of the circle of critique was to bring the artists together, and we critique the work and encourage the artist to perform. Well, from that, we got some dynamic artists and videographers, and one day we just put it all together and we made a video. Not knowing really anything about the video world, I entered the video into the Detroit Film Festival and I won second place. So I got a call.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you. I got a call from AOL and they said, "Can we speak to Anita Williams?" That was my name at the time. She produced the film, and we're looking for her to scout films for us. And I'm
What?
thinking, huh? What? Huh? I just was pulling people together and trying to encourage them to do their art, and I got spotlighted. So I find
Wow.
myself in that position of encouraging other people, motivating other people. But then when it comes back around, they come back to me. So from there, I actually moved to Columbus, Ohio, and I met a lady named Edith Cooper, and she said, "Hey, why don't we do the Black Cultural Festival?" And I said, okay. And I said, "Well, what will that entail?" She said, "Well, if you look around, there's a lot of Africans here." And so I found out that there were 35 different African nations living in large communities in the city of Columbus. And I
Oh,
started noticing when
really?
I went to work on my job in my office, there were 7 different African nations represented in my office, which was totally different than the city that I came from. And I said, "Hey, what am I seeing here?" So we began to talk and we put together what was called the Black Cultural Festival. And the purpose of the festival was to bring all of the African countries together to share culture, to uplift, motivate, and strengthen our community as one. Because as African Americans, we had separate cultures, but because of the forced enslavement, we learned how to meld and become one people. So, looking at the community, you had the Kenyans over here, the Nigerians were over there, the people from South Africa were over there, the people from Senegal was over there, and everybody just kind of stayed in their little huddle. Whenever they had celebratory events, they invite their people. So they weren't really mixing. So we decided that having the festival highlighting the culture of each country should bring us together and bring in the African Americans. So I changed the name of my organization from Metro Detroit Intellectual Society to the African Roots and Heritage Foundation.
Wow.
And how we get to African Roots and Heritage Foundation is another little story. After we completed the Black Cultural Festival, after talking to many community leaders, everybody said, oh, we'll be there, we'll be there. And when we had the festival, only the African Americans showed up. So we had to go back to the drawing board. How can we get the Africans? We went and spoke with them. We invited them. We made them a part, but they didn't show up. So what can we do to get them to show up? So we went back to the drawing board. I talked to the Africans. They said, well, when you say Black, that basically means African American. We didn't feel a part of that. So I had to think of a name that would encompass both Africans from the continent and African Americans. And that's how I came up with the African Roots and Heritage Festival. And from there, we had several festivals up until 2012 was the last festival that I held. And of the 35 different nations that was represented in the Columbus, Ohio area, 19 of them actually came to the table and helped me plan and execute the festival. So the change in the name definitely was the big difference. And everyone felt included. Everyone felt that African roots signified them.
Yeah, included both groups.
Yes.
Wow, and you're also a Queen Mother, right? Don't think I would forget about that one.
Yes, in 2016, the Aqua Prim people contacted me and asked me would I have the honor bestowed upon me to be installed as a Queen Mother. And of course I said yes. How can I deny it? So that was based upon my reputation on the continent as well as here in the United States. The group of people that asked me, I had known them from other events that had taken place. And so it is a position of development. And I was the first woman in this particular community to hold this particular title and this particular stool.
Well, congratulations, definitely, in all your accomplishments and everything that you're doing in life. And I mean, the energy is just fantastic. And you reach both sides. You reach Africans and the African Americans, and that's something rare. You don't, normally someone will gravitate to one side. Like for me, I feel like I bridge the gap between Africa and the Caribbean, and that's because I'm Caribbean, and that's my heritage, and that's my culture. And I feel that Africans and African Caribbean have a lot in common. Our food and our culture and some of our beliefs are still Afrocentric based, belief.
Yes.
For you, you really bridge the gap between those here in the Americas and those there in the continent. And you even plan tours. Like I think last year, 2 years ago, you planned a tour to Benin and Ghana for
Yes, that's
Africa.
correct.
And you do the for your students. How does that go with your students? You do a lot of student tours?
Yes, actually, I had created as a class where a person could get an upper level credit for taking the class and get an experiential learning experience, actual, taking the classroom to the ground, taking the classroom to the actual area that we're studying. So it gives them insight in culture and
Yeah.
history and it's an experience, a lifelong experience that they'll never forget.
What's your life mantra? What do you think is your mantra that you live by in life?
3 words: uplift, motivate, and inspire. Whenever I go into a group of people or even do a one-on-one, before that conversation is over, someone will say, "Oh, I feel so uplifted from your conversation." Or
That's
they say, "I'm so
true.
motivated."
She
Or
definitely
they say,
does.
"I'm inspired." So I have to be in the mode of uplifting, motivating, and inspiring at all given time.
And that is a wonderful way to be because that's how you draw people to you. Especially as
Yes,
an African American dealing with Africans, they're like, oh, what is this African American trying to do for us? So, but your personality, it draws people to you. And it's definitely a gift. So the pandemic is here. We're in lockdown. I see a post on Facebook. You had the COVID, yes?
yes, I did.
How did you handle it? Give me a little insight on that.
Well, I had it worse than what I've seen people reporting. I think I had the worst level before death because I had to fight for my life. It was not easy. It
Oh,
was not pretty, and I feel I'm blessed that God gave me the strength to live and the strength to fight because I had to fight my way
it was
through.
that bad, eh?
Yes, it was. Yes, it was. I lost 14 pounds, and since
Yes,
then
you did.
lost
Yeah.
I lost 6 more, so I'm down 20 pounds. So go 2020. So that's my silver lining. That's my silver lining behind that disease. I just wish I had the same medications and treatment that
Hmm.
President.
Trump had, right?
Yes, I wish I had that
The
same
three
treatment.
day, the 3 day. How long did
Yeah,
it
the
last
three
for
day
you?
treatment. For me, it was 3.5, 4 weeks.
Ah,
And then after it was over, then it took about 4 or 5 more weeks to feel totally well. And I went down for the count. Um, just briefly, the first 2 days, I guess I felt like Mike Tyson had hit me and knocked me straight out. I could not wake up. I could not get up for 2 straight days. And then on the third day, I asked my grandson, I said, "Grandson," I said, "would you go and make me a bowl of soup?"
so you in the hospital,
And
you were at home.
I was at
You dealt
home.
with it at home
Yes,
by yourself.
yes, yes.
Did you
And
call doctors?
I I actually went to the doctor, and the doctor gave me a prescription to be admitted into the hospital. I could not breathe. I could not talk because I couldn't breathe, and they turned me away.
From the
So
hospital?
from the hospital.
So their thinking is that go home and deal with it, or we're too crowded. We don't have the capacity to deal with another victim.
Well, it was I got it pretty early on, and that was when they didn't know what to do, and they they were not admitting people into the hospital. At least they did not admit me.
Oh, wow.
and neither did I get the test.
So they never tested you.
I was denied testing everything.
And this is in Kentucky.
No, this was in Michigan.
In Michigan.
Mhm.
Well, I'm happy, and it's a blessing that you made it through, and that you were able to come here today and have this insightful interview. COVID is real, and I tell people
It
all the
is.
time, the more people that I talk to that's had the virus, and the way they explain to me, let me know I should stay at home and I should wear my mask, and I should be very careful when I go outside, because I know just from listening to people, it's not something that I want to experience.
No,
I don't know, you know?
it's a horrible, horrible experience. And you really have to fight to stay alive, have the will to live. Um, but it is something that can be beat. And I think that if more individuals had access to medication in the first 3 days of their illness, that we would see much lower death rates. Um, I believe in my city alone, um, if you did get admitted to the hospital, you were near death. And it was so bad that they even had radio announcements saying that if you have the COVID, do not call 911.
Yeah, they had that here too. Do
And
not call 911. Do not come
do
to the
not,
hospital.
right. So, um, but things are different now. So you can go to the hospital, you can be
Yeah.
hospitalized, you can get treatment. But it for us, we had a very high death toll in this city because people were not being treated for various reasons.
Hmm. I'm thankful. We're very thankful, and it's a blessing that you were able to make it through that experience. We're gonna go ahead and wrap it up. But first, I want you to talk to the African Americans that's listening, that may have some notion about Africa, and I want you to encourage them to, at least once in their life, to return home, and what benefits it would be for them to at least return for at least a visit or a vacation.
I would say, first of all, get a DNA test. I know there's a group of African Americans that are refusing to get the DNA test because their claim is that they were the Aboriginal American, this is their land, and so therefore they're not going to do a DNA test. But when you do the DNA test, it does give you an idea of the region that your ancestors come from, um, as well as it gives you an idea of where you want to go to visit. A lot of people think about Africa as the death and the dying and the wars and all bad things, but all that is media. And I have to show them the pictures um, that I take of Africa and show them that it is just as developed as it is here. They have cars, they have street lights, they have internet, they have beautiful houses, they have everything that we have. The way they structure their society may just simply be different than we know. But for me, going to Africa was like going home. The home that you know that you have in the back of your mind, but you never been there. That's Africa. When you get there, that at first experience is experience that nobody can tell you about. Only you can go and have that experience and you tell other people about. One of the first things that I experienced when I went to Africa, Senegal was the very first country. The thing that I noticed was the weather and the air. Somehow or another, the weather just felt perfect to me. To another person, they may have felt hot and aggravated or whatever have you. But for me, it was the perfect weather because I am always cold. It was perfect.
That's from growing up in Detroit. I grew up in
Exactly.
Chicago. I grew up in Chicago. I know
Yeah,
about that Midwest cold, no doubt.
right. And so, well, when you go there, it's like perfect weather. It's perfect because that's where our DNA is based. So we're going to be acclimatized to the weather, whether we think about it or not. That was nothing that I thought about. The food. I found the food for my people in Angola. There's a dish
You're
that
from
they make.
Angola? Your DNA is from Angola?
Yes,
So is
yes.
mine.
Wow. So you must go to Angola with me.
I have to. My sister and I that's amazing.
Yes,
When I did my DNA,
we were actually supposed to have the 20-year reunion to Angola this year because the first time I went to Angola was 2000. And I met a group of Angolans. I met them down in South Africa, but since then they have repatriated back home to their home of Angola. But they make this dish called funge. And if you have any South Carolina or Georgia roots, funge is collard greens and cornbread with some ham hocks.
we love that collard greens and home. But
Okay.
let's not talk
Okay.
food. Let's not talk food, please. You can see the COVID
but
weight. You can see the COVID weight. We won't talk food.
but my point is when you travel to these different countries, you'll find similar foods
Yes.
that ties you to your DNA. And it was only Angola that tied me. When I went to Senegal, oh, that food is delicious, but it didn't tie me. But when
So
I
your
got that
taste
food from
bud, it woke up
Angola,
your taste buds and your
yes,
DNA.
yes, yes. And then when you look at the history of the slave trade, the very first Africans that came to American soil came from Angola. So that's why we have those cooking traditions in that area.
Yeah. Well, for my family, our migration was to South America.
Hmm.
We were taken from Angola to the island of São and Principal, that island there, and then from that island transported to South America. So that's how my family got into Guyana. So that's where I was born, and that's where my family is. And we have Portuguese in our family,
Hmm.
which is would come from Angola because that was the first settlement. The first slave or owners were Portuguese in Angola. So
Right.
it pays to know your history. It
Yes.
pays to take
Yes.
that DNA test. I took mine about 3, 4 years ago, and it was very exciting. So, but
Yes.
wow, 'cause
Yes.
I was at a restaurant. This guy was looking at me, and I was just staring, staring, staring. I'm like, "Uncle, are you okay?" I said, "Do I look like someone you know?" He says, "Yes." I said, "Really?" He says, "Yes, you look like someone I know, but they're not here in America." I said, "Where are they?" He goes, "I'm from Angola." And I'm like,
Yes.
"Really?" I said, "So there's a twin of me walking around in Angola?"
Yes. Yes.
It's like,
Yes.
you see, it's like, no, your features and, you look like someone I know in Angola. I was like, wow,
Right.
I really
Right.
have to visit,
Yes.
really have
Yes.
to
I
visit.
encourage everyone to go at least once. And I would. Ghana is a very popular spot, but
Yes,
everybody didn't come from Ghana.
right,
But be
right.
brave. Get that DNA test, and that DNA test will guide you to where you will go and find your people.
Yeah, it could be Gambia, it could be Nigeria, Benin,
Yes.
anywhere,
Yes.
everywhere. But it's exciting
Mine.
to know.
Yes, mine was a Congo, Angola, Cameroon split. They had the highest DNA percentages. And then I really have some of everything, even
Yes,
Botswana
yeah,
in my DNA. So Botswana is one of the countries I want to go to because in my mind, the people from Botswana were not part of the slave trade. So I'm curious to know how did I get the Botswana DNA?
right.
And it's
Great,
really
great, great,
strong
great,
too.
great, 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 great,
Yes,
great, great.
yes, yes.
How exciting. Give us all your information. If someone is would like to get in touch with you, if they want to know more about what you do, if they want to know more like how to get in touch with the African Roots and Heritage Foundation. So give us all your contacts.
Okay. Anyone can reach me via Facebook at Anita Diop. That's Anita Diop. I can also be found on Instagram under African Princess 0204. I can also be found on LinkedIn under Anita Diop. And my telephone number is on my Facebook page and Instagram.
Okay. Well, definitely, you guys know. And at the end, I'm going to put all the information up. So in the comment section, I haven't even checked the comment section to see if anyone made any comments. So let me see, my phone didn't buzz. So definitely, if you guys have any questions or anything, just pop it in the comment section and we'll be able to review it. This show will also be on Spotify, YouTube, Google Podcasts, and iTunes Podcasts within the next 72 hours. So you guys go ahead and check it out. And as always, thank you for joining me. Ms. Diop, anything else you would like to tell our audience before we go?
I would like to say this to the African audience. Whenever you are around African Americans, I ask you, I demand of you to speak your native language. Teach those that you come in contact with at least how to say hello in your native language, how to say goodbye, thank you, things of that sort. Because there's one reason. When you speak your native language, we in the diaspora get to hear the voice of our ancestors.
Thank you so much. I wasn't born in Africa.
Welcome.
But Africa was born in me. I really
That's right.
appreciate you joining me today. It was very lovely. You're welcome to come back anytime on Women Wednesday with Lady Be Blessed. And definitely thank all my viewers and everyone that tune in every Wednesday. And next week we have another exciting episode. Thank you very much, Professor Anita, for gracing us with your magnificent presence. Oh, you are welcome. You are welcome anytime. Thank you, guys. See you next week. Another episode with Women Wednesday with Lady Be Blessed. Bye. Until we meet again.
Kwaheri Yakuka Ona. Goodbye until we meet again.
Thank you. I won't try that. I'm going to have to call you so you could teach me that.
Okay.
All right. Have a great day.
All right. You too.
Bye-bye.